Wow, very good morning and welcome to Morning Cafe. My name is Fred Indimuli. How hot is the coffee where you are?
I'm used to Stanley Nyeringita. This morning we serve them a traditional way, not the whole English kind of breakfast. It's a whole jam-packed show from right now all the way to 10 a.m. Some health and fitness coming your way, matters ending FGM, and also some fitness.
Okay. Plus the news coming away from footballing world is very interesting. Yesterday, Arsenal walifanya ile kitu.
But we don't really have to majorly even discuss that.
Really, realize, recognize. Walipunguza speed ya wale jamaa. Elsewhere at the Africa Cup of Nations tournament, something big coming up this Wednesday. South Africa versus Nigeria, and then Ivory Coast versus DRC. Very, very juicy games for the semi-finals coming this Wednesday. Something to look forward to as well.
I think now she'll support DRC.
Oh yeah, it's the only ESC member state still at the AFCON. Yeah, typically, but now the hosts are still there. But just imagine Nigeria versus South Africa. That's a big game.
That's a big one.
Oh yes.
It's some Amapiano versus the Afro vibes. Yes.
So you never know. Possibility of Amapiano versus Lingala later on for the finals. Anyway, a quick look at the dailies this morning. The headlines. The People Daily, how farms milk security guards. Wow. Matters contracts and salaries.
On the Standard on graft, Ruto is more back than bite. Wow. On the Business Daily, women-led farm fights for NSC 800 billion shilling bond trades. Wow, what a mouthful. Katika gazeti la Taifa Leo, Ruto kupaa tena. Tuko tunakuelezea atakuwa anaenda wapi huko kipaa.
Magazeti zaidi.
Right, those are the dailies for you this morning. Let's see how the weather might be looking like for you this morning. Night 17 degrees Celsius. Well, feels like a whole 18 degrees Celsius. Promises to get hotter, as hot as 27 degrees Celsius. This particular month we said no more rains and all that. The roads are looking clear, as you can see. Mombasa Road getting into the CBD as well. Most roads are looking clear as well, getting into that is a whole Mombasa Road. Before you actually get into Nyayo Stadium, the yellow means some slight traffic jam and a slight traffic snarl-up will probably eases as you get into that Douglas Okihuri Road. Other roads, just before you actually get into Haile Selassie roundabout, there's a slight traffic snarl-up into also that railway museum, that's the bus stop. And those are the roads for you this morning.
All right. Let's take a look at the highlights now. And police say they're pursuing 7 suspects in connection to Thursday's gas explosion tragedy at Muradi area of Embakasi, which left 6 people dead and more than 200 others hospitalized. President William Ruto to host a visiting Polish president Andrzej Duda at State House today, and later this week head to Japan for his second international trip this year.
Meanwhile, newly sworn-in president of Namibia, Nangolo Mbumba, indicates that he will not take part in elections due later this year, hours after taking over from his predecessor, President Hage Geingob, who died on Sunday.
All right. Do we have the diary today?
Oh, yes. Let's take a look at the diary for you this morning, even as we flip that for you. Right. So, well, first off, we do expect that state visit by the president of Poland, that is Duda. Let me just get other highlights. But then also do expect 15,000 National Youth Service servicemen and women to be the whole sourcing them up from different wards this particular day. Cabinet Secretary of Health, Susan Akumicha, will be in Makueni County for poll public participation on that particular social health fund as well. Those are just but a few of what to expect in our news diary this morning. We'll be updating this as we move on in the hour.
All right, let's now get to the newspapers. And it's interesting that when you look at our dailies today, there's always those two familiar faces. One, William Ruto, the other, Raila Odinga. They feature both on the front page of The Standard and The Daily Nation. Let's start off with The Standard. On graft, Ruto is more back than bite. That's the big headline on the front page of The Standard. This is according to some survey findings. They say that President William Ruto's tough talk on corruption seems to just be that, talk. Going by the latest survey, the talk is empty, as Kenya dropped in its ranking on corruption fight, doing worse than the global average and showing little effort to tame the scourge in the continent. Wow. Now, 31 is a score that Kenya got on the Transparency International survey on how countries are fighting corruption. 34 is Africa's average score in the war against scourge. The global average is 43. And we got 31. Clearly. Another big headline, probably some piece of news that went by without people noticing. It was 4 years later, Moi's influence still being felt, his fourth death anniversary. Family and friends converged at former President Daniel Moi's home in Kabarak, Nakuru County, to mark the 4th anniversary of his passing. They paid homage to a statesman whose life, they said, inspired unity, spirituality, and love. And on page 2, The Standard has dedicated the entire of page 2 to that story. There are quite a number of photos there of the family of the late president during that 4th anniversary celebration. Back to the front page, more highlights. Fallen Namibia leader was a true friend of Kenya. President Hage Geingob supported the country in good and bad times, including when President William Ruto and his predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta were indicted by the ICC. Yes, world leaders, both in Africa and beyond, continue mourning the fallen leader of Namibia. More highlights. TSC seeks more power to rule over teachers. Amending the TSC Act will give the Commission more regulatory powers over teachers and control over the continuous professional development. More highlights on the top strip of The Standard. Raila on IEBC, we are ready for the streets. On the international stage, Cape Verde eliminates malaria. In business, tension as CBK meets on interest. Will it go down? Will it go up? And finally, one more highlight on sports. If we turn the page, and I'm trying to avoid mentioning that name, it's the same way. It's the same way that they can't mention a name like Ipketer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so why should I struggle to mention a name that is not African? Holland and Garnacho score as Man United hammer West Ham. At least Man United did the thing as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And we're not even, shouting about it as Arsenal fans.
Because it didn't make any significant change either way, so it was just one of those. It's
a 3-0 versus a 3-1.
Well, one made a lot of difference. That's the Standard today.
On the delineation crisis over MP seats, and they say reforms, boundaries of 290 constituencies were gazetted on the 7th of March 2012. So the country is hurtling towards a constitutional crisis with a 12-year deadline imposed by the Constitution for review of constituency borders lapsing next month. A report before the Parliament compiled by representatives of President Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga during bipartisan talks to end anti-government protests holds the key to averting the emergency that threatens legitimacy of at least 27 constituencies. That on pages 4 and 5. And I remember last year you were talking about the impact of this, even with the palace that were there. On the bottom, Bakassi fire victims push for compensation. The whole victims of the gas explosion that killed 3 people and left over 300 others with serious burn wounds want state compensation for the negligence by public officials that's on a illegal gas filling station operating in a residential area. Matters education on the right, TSC shocker for teachers. If a new bill is enacted, over 3,000 tutors registered by the Teacher Service Commission will be required to obtain practicing certificates and enroll in mandatory continuous professional development programs or risk being barred from teaching. At the very top scroll, why election servers won't be hosted abroad. And new regulations published by the government will compel the Electoral Commission to ensure poll servers hosted locally unless permitted by law to be located outside the country. And in matters health, the high price of passive smoking. So plenty of lung cancer patients who are not smokers but have to fight the deadly disease with constant rebuttal that they never dabbled in the harmful habits. Have that on page 3. Interestingly, today, on the back page of Daily Nation, they are focusing on AFCON. They have the photos of the Cape Verde as well as the South Africa teams. The Cape Verde president says boys deserve great tribute despite painful exit from CAP. There you have it. Remember, this Wednesday, the semis begin. That is the Daily Nation.
All right, let's take a look at Taifa Leo. Kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo, habari kuu pale, Ruto kupaa tena. Sema itakuwa ziara ya 50 ya kigeni katika miezi 15 ya serikali yake inayolenga kukata matumizi. Hii ni ziara ya pili ng'ambo katika muda usiozidi siku 10. Rais asema anaenda Japan kuwatafutia Wakenya zaidi ya bilioni 160 za ustawi. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Pale chini kuna picha ya kiongozi wa ODM Raila Odinga akiwa mkutano pale Kamukunji. Habari zingine kwenye ukurasa wa mbele, siri nzito iko karibu kuiva. Mudavadi asisitiza kuna habari njema kati ya Bondo kwa Raila na serikali. Ni habari gani? Masuala ya nyumba nafuu, Raila ahongerwa. Rais Ruto amsifu kinara wa Azimio kwa kusema mpango wa nyumba nafuu ni sawa, akitaka vizuizi sasa viondolewe. Masuala ya kule ya Marekani, Biden apata ushindi mkubwa katika mchujo, ashinda kura ya Democrat kwa 94% katika jimbo la South Carolina. Na pale juu masuala ya spoti, Bafana versus Nigeria, 4 bora AFCON. Afrika Kusini wawalemea Cape Verde kwa mikwaju ya penalti, huku wenyeji Ivory Coast wakionana na DRC baada ya kubandua miamba Mali. Hizo ndizo habari zilizopewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo.
Let's go to People Daily now. 5 stories on their front page. But the big story is how farms milk security guards. They call it a servitude. While companies negotiate sumptuous contracts for services, they pay employees beggar salaries and evade taxes through under-declaration. of income and overstating deductions. So entities denied KRA 14.6 billion cash shillings for the past 6 years. That is on page 4. On the bottom scroll, meet the new UON Chancellor. Elsewhere, where auctioneers are ripping big from high interest rates. And they have a question there. Are children learning anything in school? On the top scroll, Kindiki in push for IEBC to host servers in Kenya. So once more, if new regulations are approved by Parliament, poll team will be required to store critical data within the country. So that means we'll no longer be having the song, open the servers and wear the servers.
All right.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the Business Daily. Matters Business. Women-led firm fights for NSC 800 billion shilling bond trades. There's a company that has 3 women behind, new company licensed by CMA. And the Treasury has distanced itself from firm after details emerge. A prominent female lawyer is the brains behind a new bond trading firm that has won a lucrative license to take on the Nairobi Securities Exchange for a share of the revenues from the 800 billion shilling bond business traded annually. Well, women making great strides. Another story given prominence on the front page of the Business Daily. Roads spending drops to record low in Ruto's policy shift. Means this government is spending less. So public investment in roads, power generation plants and transmission lines has been the hardest hit by the William Ruto administration's sharp development budget cuts. This is according to official data. More highlights on the ticker, still on the front page. State nets 26.8 billion shillings from housing levy. Now employers and employees paid 26.8 billion under the mandatory housing development levy scheme in the 6 months ended December amid legal hitches that threatened to stop the controversial tax. I saw some people demanding for a refund. Whether or not that will happen is another story. Naivas siblings in fresh battle for father's estate. It's a continuing story. And finally, bank dollar rates ease on shilling rally. Commercial bank dollar rates eased notably in the past week, coinciding with a rare rally by the Kenyan shilling against the greenback. And that's a Business Daily.
All right. On the Star, City Tycoon, my betrayal, pain, family feuds, and messy divorce is the big story. And they're going to say, says unending court cases, part of wider plot to crush him. We have that on pages 4 and 5. To call it matters bad blood there. Billionaire's relative says cousins using ex-wife to bring down his home. But other stories on the front page of the Star, matters politics. Raila rejects panels, IBC panels bid to recruit poll chiefs. Under the very left, step down from car grant case. SRC tells judges that is the Salaries and Remuneration Commission now seeking the disqualification of judges appointed to hear a case seeking the introduction of 10 million cash shillings car grant for the judicial officers. So the CRC on Friday told a 3-judge bench to recuse itself over a clear case of a conflict of interest. On the bottom, budget experts poke holes in housing levy law. So a whole team of economists who advise Parliament on matters public finance have pointed out loopholes in the law. President William Ruto's administration is proposing to anchor the controversial housing levy. You can have that on page 8. And finally, the top strip, it is a big blow for even the film industry. Actor Charles Oda passes away 6 months after engagement with Shiko Muriuki. And quite a sad story. I mean, I grew up watching him, and in Makutano Junction and other shows. And I remember even back then when I was quite young, I'd really look at some of this talents and say I'd now really want to be on the screens just because of what they really used to do.
Charles Oda was one of those brilliant minds, both as an actor, a producer, a director, a scriptwriter. Sad indeed. May his soul rest in peace.
Did you work with him?
No, we never got to work together, though. Yeah.
Right, that is the Star for you. Rest in peace, Charles.
Okay, let's now focus on regional matters as we just about to cross the borders and take a look at the East African. Museveni bets on Samia to save oil plan. Now, this is after the Kenyan talks got stuck. The Ugandan leader has sent technocrats to Dar to thrash out a new deal. On the front page of the East African, photo there of that gas explosion tragedy in Embakasi, titled Tragedy in the City. Other highlights on the East African: Italy, Africa ties small cash with big strings. And honeymoon is over. Ruto faces hostile stronghold. President is finding it hard to inspire fervor among hustler nation on high living costs. That's a story inside the East African on page 12. Tuweza kuvuka border sasa comfortably.
Oh, yes. And I was hoping to have the Rwandan paper, but it seems as if they haven't, I don't know if they're still yet sleeping, not updated. But then anyway, in Tanzania, the Citizen, Kwala dry port to ease Dar cargo congestion, and they say responding to rising cargo volume and congestion at Dar es Salaam port, the government has fully operationalized the Kwala dry port. This initiative, handling 60% of cargo flow, demonstrably expedites processing times and facilitates smoother operations. Another story, keen on the Citizen, EAC to roll out local antibiotic production, combat imports. That is the Citizen for you this morning.
All right.
Right to Mwananchi.
You have it there? Yes, you have it.
Right. On the Mwananchi, and to have, yes, Kinana awatupia dongo Chadema, adokeza kuwa asema walikwenda katika vikao vya maridhiano na CCM wakiwa na agenda binafsi, ahoji sababu za maandamano wakati bunge lilikusanya maoni. Mnyika mjibu akisema ni kauli za kupotisha umma. Masuala ya siasa kule Tanzania. Taarifa nyingine, pale Juma lori kuegeshwa ovyo kunavyotesa wakazi Dar. Kwingineko, safari ya watoto waliozidi uzito kuanza matibabu. Hivi ndio vidokezo katika gazeti la Mwananchi hii leo.
Okay. Let's go to Uganda now and take a look at the Daily Monitor. The big headline: scramble for free kidney transplants. Who will get lucky, they ask? 5 patients of the already registered 30 on dialysis will be given the costly treatment for free at Mulago National Referral Hospital as the government goes back to the drawing board on cost of the procedure. Interesting story there. Free kidney transplants in Kampala. They have an interesting photo on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Back to school. Time to get back to schools as new term begins. It's February. Is that when they open the schools?
I think for the Form 1s, they are Form 1.
No, they're just saying schools across the country in Uganda have reopened for their first term. So it means they've been on holiday.
The whole of January.
The whole of January. Interesting. Let's take a look at the other daily from Uganda. That's the New Vision. On the New Vision, minister issues tough rules on school bullying. Matters education given prominence on both newspapers. Matters bullying. And then a picture there of UPDF officers graduating from Makerere. So Matters education making it to the front pages of both the Daily Monitor and the New Vision. But then again, Matters health as well, with that scramble for free kidney transplants. All right, let's come back home and take a look at the cartoons this morning.
Page 12 of the Standard, page 13 of the Daily Nation, and page 10 of the People Daily.
On page 12 of the Standard, it matters to do with public debt. The government struggling with that, under the weight of public debt. And meanwhile, hustlers are also struggling under the weight of digital lenders. So a sort of juxtaposition there, drawing a parallels between the government and the common mwananchi, and how both appear to be struggling with debt.
Right. So even as the government is struggling with that, on page 13 of the Daily Nation, Iga says, rather has a gentleman there running after another gentleman, trying to ransack a student or maybe a parent to drop off all the coins that this parent has. And they're saying it is getting into that bowl of levies. And this gentleman has a coat of arms behind his coat says, "Stop, government hates competition."
All right.
Yes. On page 10 of the People Daily, the government is saying this time I'll have to ban the midnight oil. And it is on matters of investigations and previous disasters, so they keep on piling up one after another. Even as the year started, the whole gruesome, mysterious deaths, they should be on this pile. So now there's the Embakasi fire incident. We're not sure what is coming next.
Remember, there was a Sinai fire that happened some years back, and the buildings that have come down, the number of buildings that have collapsed and killed innocent people. And the question everyone is asking, how come we never get to see any conviction? Yet there's always one tragedy after another where obviously someone neglected to do their work, or they did something wrong. They bypassed some building regulations or licensing regulations, and they end up causing this kind of tragedy. Yet investigations happen, but you can see that kind of pile that the government has on its desk. Will they do something this time round? That's a question.
Well, they banned the midnight oil. Right.
They always say we will leave no stone unturned. Wow, it's a charade. Anyway. All right. Those are the newspapers this morning. After the break, we'll be looking at some of these headlines with my panelists. We had indicated earlier that Kileleshwa MCA Robert Alai will be joining us, but unfortunately, he's not able to. But we'll still be having in studio Bwana Joseph Kagai and Edward Githaiga. So we'll be discussing these issues and a lot more with these two gentlemen. And yes, do stand by for that fitness. What can I call it? It's a Fitness Monday.
Yes.
What exactly will you be doing today?
Just basically stretching here and there.
Okay.
The full body workout basically, and just touching each and every single bit of your.
So get ready.
Your body into the yes.
Look for your trucks, and all right. Do stand by for that. You can be part of this conversation meanwhile through social media on X TV47 News and on Facebook TV47 Kenya. You're watching Morning Cafe. All right, welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. Time for us to take a look at the state of the nation. This morning, the front page of the Daily Nation reads like this: crisis over MP seats. And it's talking about the country hurtling towards a constitutional crisis with a 12-year deadline imposed by the Constitution for review of constituency borders lapsing next month. On the front page of the Standard, on graft, Ruto is more back than bite. President William Ruto's tough talk on corruption seems to be just that, talk. This morning, we're privileged to have in studio Edward Githaiga.
Thank you.
He's a CIO, Africa for Haiti lobby group.
Yes.
And also CEO Vision 2030 Youth.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good to have you in studio.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Oh, we're still doing it.
They say once you cross February, then the year has already gone.
Oh, yeah.
But all the well, it's a good day to be here, and I'm glad to be back here after you left the studio in Parklands.
Okay. Karibu sana.
Good experience to be in the new studio. Beautiful place.
Welcome to TV47.
Thank you.
Now, it's interesting that you are the CIO, Africa for Haiti lobby group, because there's been a lot of discussion with this, especially on that plan by President William Ruto to send a contingent of police officers to Haiti. And I would want to know your involvement, or how do you plug into this whole issue from a Kenyan perspective?
Yes.
Because our debate is still rife.
Thank you very much. Of course, Africa for Haiti is a lobby group. That's a Pan-African lobby group that has always been looking at the issue of Haiti. This is not the first time we're dealing with this issue of Haiti. Haiti has gone through several challenges in the past, but this time around, the world has opened up its eyes and has seen that Haiti is in dire need of a good government, or an elected government, or restoration of law and order and peace and security. So basically, we're a lobby group. We're here to lobby on behalf of Haitian people. We are friends of Haiti. We work with Haitians in Kenya and Haitians in their diaspora. Yes.
About the debate on whether or not to send police officers there, because it is a plan that many have loaded, but from a Kenyan perspective, it has met quite some hurdles.
Yes.
What is your take on what's happening?
I support the deployment to Haiti. For one, it's mandated by the United Nations Security Council, Resolution 2699. And basically, this is a cry of Haiti. When you have a country that is being run by gangs and gangsters, then what does the future hold for the children and the women and the elderly? So the plea was made by the Prime Minister of Haiti to the United Nations, and a resolution was drafted by the United States of America, and it was passed unanimously without no veto. Obviously, you know how the UN Security Council works. China did not veto it, neither did any other country that has veto power. So that shows it has full support. Even though some countries are feeling like they don't want to participate in it because they feel that the Prime Minister is not elected, but selected because the country needed some form of governance. But in the end of the day, Haiti, one, apart from restoring peace and security, is bringing back the economy of Haiti. As you may know, Haiti is a very dear country to Africa. During the olden days, 16th, 17th, 18th century, Haiti was one of the countries that abolished slavery. It was the first black republic in the Western Hemisphere that fought against the slavers and the slave traders and that whole system. And they defeated them. And thereafter, Haiti became the first black republic by defeating Napoleon of France. So you can see the inspiration where we as Kenyans get the inspiration from Haiti, especially as a Pan-Africanist, because even the people like Mau Mau, the freedom fighters in Africa, were inspired that at a time when the black man globally was being oppressed and killed and maimed and everything, we had a resilient people from Haiti who fought against that. And therefore, this is what that picked up the African American resistance against segregation. And you remember Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the like. So Haiti is very important.
Okay.
Yeah. And secondly, also Haiti is important to us because number one, our police will get more experience. Number two, our global standing will rank high as a reliable nation that can step in on behalf of others.
But the question is about the constitutionalism for this deployment.
Yes.
The court has pointed out that there are obvious gaps.
Yes.
That probably a few things should have been done. Yet you see the president insisting that it will go on, despite that. It may be a noble idea,
yes.
a noble reason to actually deploy.
Full of morality.
Yes.
Yes.
But then again, when it is in defiance of our constitution, it raises some serious questions.
I think, we're jumping the gun too soon. We're not the ones who decided about going to Haiti. Haiti, like I said, it was a United Nations resolution. And you know very well, Kenya has been in the forefront of peace, security globally. It's been known to be contributing towards peace efforts globally. When it comes now to the Constitution, indeed, Justice Muita spelled it out and said that it has some gaps. And this is what the president has been addressing, especially the gap that needs to be filled in is that we need to have a bilateral.
Meaning that the Haitian government
yes.
Needs to write directly to
Which
Kenya.
I'm sure they've already done, right? And this is what the president said the other day. In a week's time or so, that will be all clear. And obviously, Kenya established diplomatic relations in the sidelines of the New York General Assembly in 2023, if you remember very well, when the president was addressing that matter. So they had a bilateral discussion at the United Nations in New York with the president, and they have set diplomatic ties already.
How come they never did this earlier? Because,
no, as you can see, Haiti...
Because questions have been asked about, is the government in Haiti able? Is it in place properly? Is it properly constituted to actually write to Kenya or to have a bilateral agreement with any other country?
I mean, they have a prime minister, they have a government. I mean, it's recognized by the UN. You cannot say, are they capable or not? Capability, even here in Africa, we have questions we can ask about different states, but the UN recognized it. So if the UN, which is the global governing body of all of us together internationally, has seen the need for that and has also appreciated the Haiti Prime Minister coming forward with that request, then who are we to say no?
Then it sounds very simple. One would have thought that this agreement should have been there.
No, don't forget, Haiti has gone through different challenges, even with governance. This is not the first time. We've had 3 presidents being assassinated in their state house. So you can imagine, we've had 5 presidents. So out of the five, 3 are assassinated. Where would Kenya be today? Would be in a lot of turmoil. Don't forget also, Haiti is a wealthy nation, a nation full of resources. So Haiti can be self-sustaining. It can lift up itself out of the abject poverty that they have. And then again, let's not look at it from a political aspect only. Let's look at it from a humanitarian aspect only. Remember, Haiti have children. The majority of the population in Haiti are young people, like all over the world. They are women, right? They are elderly. There are no services being offered. I mean, gangs in every sector, in every region are running the country, basically. So we need to at least, and you see, this force, apart from just being a force, even a policeman, before he arrests you, or maybe there's a hostage situation, there's a negotiation. We're not saying I'm not saying, what I believe is not being said. The gangsters are still Asian. They're not like a foreign occupation. So there will be a lot of mediation, there will be a lot of discussions to see, is it a unitary government that will be formed so that it's all acceptable with the people? And what do the people feel?
Okay.
Yeah.
But you say your lobby group is a Pan-African movement, meaning it's not just Kenya.
No.
But how come Haiti now is looking more and more like a Kenyan problem? Who else is sending help?
Oh my. Several countries. Just to name a few, we have Burundi in Africa. We have Senegal.
They've sent their police? Or
they are part. No, they are part of the team. They will be sending police together with Kenya. What Kenya is doing is leading the mission, then the others to follow. So there are about 6 or 7 countries which are also contributing, and that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So Burundi, Senegal, in the Caribbean islands, we have the CARICOM countries. CARICOM is like the AU of the Caribbean islands. So we have Antigua, Barbuda, we have Barbados, we have Jamaica. So it's not just an African Kenyan force, no. It's a Pan-African force because, as you can see, we have the Caribbean countries, African countries as well.
And there's another question that has been asked because our police structure structure now is a police service, not a force.
Yes.
But you talk about a force. Probably the KDF would have been better placed to do this job?
You see, you also have to understand international law and mandates of security. For KDF to leave Kenya to go and bring that, then it had to be an army of some sort, or a ragtag army, or unconventional army, like say Al-Shabaab. You understand? Military. But what we have now is at the level of the pedigree of police. So it's dealt by the police, not the military.
It's a civilian problem.
It's a civilian problem. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's a conversation that will definitely continue. Matters to do with that expected deployment of about 1,000 Kenyan police officers.
So I just want to point out what we're planning to do.
Okay.
And rightly so, like you said, there are many gaps that have been seen, and we have also seen a gap. There is a gap of people to people. So that is what we're trying to fill ourselves as the lobby group. So we're having various events that will be taking place. This year in March, we are holding a concert in Nairobi, hopefully at the Uhuru Gardens, just to bring the Haitian community, the Kenyan people, so that we raise that global consciousness and awareness. And then in December 2024, God willing, we'll have another concert in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. So that we can show and also have it be a people-led process, not just the enforcement, but the people also.
You anticipate that the situation will be conducive enough for such an event?
I'm hoping. That's why I said I'm hoping. Okay. So. And also, we have various things in common. Did you know in Haiti they have manyangas?
Manyangas like
matatus. Yes.
Okay.
Painted, all graffitied. So we have so many correlations that we have with the Haitian people. We're talking about our cultures. They are very deep in African traditional culture in Haiti. We're talking about our people, exchange of ideas, social ideas. And what we also want to bring is the social aspect around it. Youth empowerment, women empowerment, economic empowerment. We want to bring this discussion. And Kenya is a country that has succeeded in, say, social empowerment to a certain degree, especially in Africa. You can see we have like Youth Enterprise Development Fund, Women Enterprise Development Fund. So the economic aspect of Haiti needs to also be looked into. Yeah, so we're bringing this conversation to the table. And we're also going to be holding various discussions, panel discussions around the world. We're going to be in Miami, in New York with the Haitian community that lives in the diaspora. And even today, I just came off the call with the diaspora president for the youth, Kibungei, who lives in Canada, and he's organizing something there. And there's another team also in London that is going to be organizing, which is part of Africa for Haiti.
All right.
Yeah.
As I said, it's definitely an interesting conversation.
Yes.
It's good that we have you in studio for that conversation. But
thank you.
If you look at the front page of the Daily Nation, one of the headlines there is about this Embakasi fire. And many Kenyans will argue that why send our police to try and enforce or try and bring peace to a foreign country when so many things are happening locally. Because fine, it may not be directly related, but we have a lot of issues about enforcement, about ensuring that our laws are adhered to. Things like licensing. Even right now, police are pursuing suspects, and chances are they may be successful or not. We've had so many such incidences in Kenya where our police have been found to be wanting in some extent. They've not been able to bring so many people to book. So even as we talk about Haiti and sending our police service there, many questions are being asked locally. Do you feel confident enough that Kenya's police has done enough locally for them to be actually strong enough to be sent elsewhere?
Kenya has roughly about over 100,000 standing police officers. And so 1,000 would be like 10% of it. Secondly, like I said, this is an African challenge. Okay, I know they leave, actually 2 years ago, was it 2 years or 3 years ago, Haiti had applied to join the AU. Haiti is a black republic. Haiti, they have an African dysentery. They have African heritage. And the country is suffering. So it's only noble for us to take this matter up so that we can be part of the development. And obviously, you know, maybe in future, I'm not talking we're going there for extraction, but maybe in future, once the country is stable, then we can be able to do trade and Kenya can be able to benefit. And secondly, the mission is being funded by the United States of America. So it's not coming from the taxpayers' money. So the taxpayers are saving that money.
Is that one of our greatest interests?
No.
There's some money coming this way?
Not really. First of all, you have to look at this money. What is it being used for? Number one, even in Kenya, the police will be trained more, will receive more equipment. Even this is well before they travel to Haiti. So you can see the capacitation of, and you see you're saying it's wanting, yes, indeed. And this is such an embarrassment because this has nothing to do with the police. The police are there to enforce the law. The people who are breaking the law, and you had the president rightly say, is our Kora, Wale, who work in the county, who are giving these permits and these licenses to these people, and even people in EPRA, because they have allowed that impunity. You've had the issue, let's read behind the lines. This gentleman had been taken to court. We've had the president talking about corruption in court and how the judicial system is being used by people to get away with crime.
The police too could take some blame to some extent.
To some extent, because they have been seeing it. I mean, you know, but they're not the licensing body. It's the licensing body to prosecute. And there's a DPP as well. But you see, this matter has been brought to court before, and I think they've been there for over 10 years, this similar place. So a thorough investigation needs to be looked into, and I would like to share my condolences with the families and the friends of those who lost their lives, and the many who are anguishing in hospital due to the pains of the high degree burns in their body.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we've had so many such cases, such instances where tragedy befalls Kenyans out of not their own action. Innocent Kenyans who live in a residential building, then the building comes down.
Yeah.
The Sinai fire tragedy where some flammable liquid was being released through trenches. Yeah. And we are yet to see any conviction years on. And do you think even this time round, do you think something different will happen? They say this is a case that has been in existence for the last 10 years.
Yes.
They know the culprits.
Yeah.
Do you think that this time round, someone will be held to account?
Indeed, this message must go down to the DPP and the judiciary, especially the Chief Justice. Look, when the judiciary is messed up, the Chief Justice needs to ask herself these questions that you're asking me today. She must ensure that justice is served to these people. And even though the judiciary, we say, is independent, we say the judiciary is independent. Indeed, it is independent. So she needs to rein in those judges. And we need to first also look at the history and find out which judge was this.
You feel it's actually a problem for the judiciary?
Yes, it's a holistic problem. It's government problem, basically. Number one, when we talk about the law, the MPs make the law. So they need to make firm, stringent law. Then the executive, which now the police are under the executive, they need to enforce strictly. And if today there is another, I'm sure there are several of these in the country, isn't it? This illegal gas refilling stations. The police need to close them down and rein in. So EPRA also.
Do you see that happening?
It will happen. It will happen. If you've had the president talk about it yesterday and the day before yesterday, he was fuming about this because this should not be allowed. And therefore, National Intelligence Service, step up your game. And I'm sure the NIS are not the ones who implement. I'm sure they had already given this recommendation and showed the risks of having such in residential areas, not alone just having it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does it say about some of the people who lead these institutions that should be at the forefront in ensuring compliance and enforcement of these laws? Institutions like NEMA, institutions like EPRA, that they do the licensing.
I think somebody should resign. I mean, the president needs to reign.
Do you see that happening?
If it doesn't happen, then sad. It is very sad. Because if it was in England, I'll give you an example, like David Blanket, former Home Secretary. His girlfriend only used his train card to travel to London and back and forth. And when that was realized or discovered, he stepped aside and he resigned. And you can see how minor that was. This is a massive thing. So we want to see people step aside and allow investigations. And those officers, and you had the president saying very firmly, those officers who were responsible to issuing and allowing this to continue should go home. And not just go home, go to prison and pay for the lives and the losses. Remember, most of the way it was, even they are poor people, you can see, majority probably don't even have health insurance. And that's why you see, we'd like to also commend the governor of Nairobi, Johnson Sakaja, for giving the people free medical care. I mean, they're not paying for anything in hospital. This is something that we have to commend the governor.
But going back to, you've quoted the president and you say he was furious and fuming. But is that enough? Because, yes, he may be angry, but we've rarely seen any of that anger translate into a conviction or anything that could actually be consequential.
Indeed, is true, but let's see.
Because
the president, as the commander-in-chief, he has given the orders.
Generally, we are very angry as a country. We are very dissatisfied. We have we point out who is to blame, and we say action must be done. Then it ends there. No action is taken, and we move on with our lives.
I'm certain 100% that the action will be taken against these people. And because he just spoke over the weekend, today is Monday. Okay, obviously enforcement Monday. Let's go now Monday. We want to see EPRA, who in EPRA, who in the Ministry of Energy, who is responsible for licensing. Who are these people, even in the Nairobi County? I also spoke with the governor, and he mentioned this, that even in the Nairobi County, they have an enforcement.
True.
And if they lapsed, they also should be answerable, because we cannot have this. And secondly, what I also hope to see is not just the prosecution of those who are in leadership behind the EPRA, energy, whatever. We want to see also the other illegal stations for gas or petrol. They need to be closed down, because we cannot afford, we cannot accept people dying like this.
Yes. In this case, despite the owner of this facility being known and so many other people who are directly responsible for the tragedy being known, the police arrested, curiously, a security guard at the facility. And the feeling in Kenya is that, yes, as long as you're big and up there, nothing will happen to you. We'll come for the small person. And then we'll move on with life.
I think it's just people are they're running too fast. I mean, the gentleman was arrested, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the police, for probably questioning, so that they can ask him what happened, how did it happen, what was happening. And don't forget, even eyewitnesses who were there, they say they could smell gas, right? They could smell gas from far. And what triggered the explosion? Are you aware what triggered it?
No.
There was a vehicle that had a battery problem or something, and they were trying to recharge it, or they were trying to start it, and a spark from that vehicle is what that led to the explosion. So it's very unfortunate that the askari was arrested, the security guard, innocent guy, but I'm sure they took him in for questioning for further investigation.
All right.
Yeah.
Time now for our break, very first break on second break on Morning Cafe. We'll be back to discuss a lot more details, especially this crisis that we have with the delimitation and review of constituency boundaries after the break. You can be part of this conversation as well on X at TV47. CIO Africa for Haiti lobby group, and that's a very interesting conversation that we should have it someday. You're also the CEO of Vision 2030 Youth.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Now I want us to focus on this crisis over MP seats that is a big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation, and it has to do with a deadline that comes up in March for the delimitation and review of boundaries of constituencies. This was supposed to have happened by now because it's supposed to happen every 12 years, at least within 12 years. And this is prescribed by the Constitution, Article 89 of the Constitution. If I could just read exactly what it says. Yes. So Article 89 of the Constitution on delimitation of electoral units, it says, there shall be 290 constituencies for the purposes of the election of members of the National Assembly. The IEBC shall review the names and boundaries of constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years. But any review shall be completed at least 12 months before a general election of members of parliament. The last review happened in 2012, meaning that we already way beyond the 8-year mark. We're actually there at the very end, meaning there's no possibility of us actually adhering to this requirement by the Constitution. It will be the very first time we're defying the Constitution, hence why they're saying it's a crisis. It's also a crisis because some constituencies, a number of these constituencies had fewer people than the prescribed population quota, and they were only protected for this period. It will be the very first time we are asking this question. Are these constituencies still valid after March? Do they still deserve the NGCDF? Because according to the law, they are no longer protected. What will happen? It is a crisis that no one is talking about. Today we've seen it on the Daily Nation. What is your take on this matter?
This is constitutional crisis, and obviously, nothing is set on stone. Yeah, we cannot say that's the end of it. I'm sure Parliament, once it gets back to the House, they will find a way to deal with this anomaly. However,
of amending the Constitution, because it is the Constitution that has said this is supposed to be happening at this time.
Indeed.
Unless you amend this, then you have a problem.
Indeed, and that's why I think they were holding also the bipartisan talks. Some of the discussions that were being held in the bipartisan talks was also looking at this matter. And the question that you asked, will the other constituencies continue to exist after March? They would, obviously, because it's a 5-year term, but there will be a crisis. You can see there's a crisis coming up and it's looming fast. But what I hope is we'll have a bipartisan approach, because this matter doesn't need us to go to the streets. It needs people to sit down and agree on how we need to do it. However, we're also seeing the political tensions now rising, because who is mandated under the Constitution to look at the boundaries? It's the IEBC, Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And we've seen now Raila Odinga coming up and saying about the IEBC issue. So we just hope that both sides, the opposition and the government side, will be able to sit down in Parliament and find a solution for this, so that we can be able to avert the crisis, because something has to be done.
Okay.
Maybe they need to come up with a form of law that can extend this. I know the Constitution states that it should not go over 12 years, but we wait to see, because that's why they get paid. In fact, this is why we pay our MPs. Our MPs are not paid because of CDF. They are paid so that they can legislate and avert such crisis. So we expect this to happen. And because we know the bipartisan body has not been exhausted, it's still ongoing. And we also have a minority and majority in Parliament. Let them sit down and avert this crisis for Kenyans.
Do you feel that probably we are trying to test the versatility of this Constitution? That we are openly ready to defy the Constitution. We are watching it happen, and we want to see what will happen, what will be the consequence.
I think there's a time we tried to talk, when Kenyatta was there was a discussion on this issue of boundaries, and people didn't want to get into that matter at that time. And you know, Kenyans, we have our culture of doing things last minute. I mean, this is a country that people rush last minute and try and solve it. So I don't read any motive or ill motive in this. It's just the way the country is, and the time has reached. So we've been postponing for the last 12 years and saying we'll review. As you know, it's also a very sensitive matter. When you say a constituency like Othaya does not qualify to be a constituency because of the number of people, you see, it's emotive, because now you're telling you're talking about disenfranchising the constituents over there. And yet we also know, we're being told there are other areas like Kiambu, I think, will have more constituencies because of the population. So this is something that needs to be dealt with soberly, and it needs a bipartisan approach.
Okay. Yeah. There's also the possibility that not everyone, as you said, you mentioned it, that not everyone is comfortable with having this conversation. Do you think that probably the delays in ensuring that IBC is in place and to review and delimit the boundaries, that probably it could be by design?
I don't think it's by design. I just think it's just the way it is. Because in the end of the day, you know, the IBC is not properly constituted. We need to have a well-constituted IBC that has all commissioners. And this is the hard nut to crack within the bipartisan. Because obviously, the different approaches have been different in the past, how we come up to choose our IBC commissioners. But I am very confident that because this matter touches on both sides, this matter touches on opposition side and government side, they will put their differences aside for the sake of Kenyans.
Sometime last year, there was a lot of talk, especially around Mount Kenya, about the 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote.
Yes.
It is definitely what we are talking about here, delimiting and changing the number of people or striking down boundaries so that you can actually ensure that each constituency meets the population quota. It is the same argument, but clearly some people were not comfortable with that kind of agitation, meaning that the whole process of delimitation and review is a hot potato for quite a number of leaders.
It is a hot potato, exactly, because as you know very well, the 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote is very dear to people of Mount Kenya. And why? Because they feel that they are kind of discriminated against because of the numbers they have. You know, there have been issues being raised before that say children in Kiambu get 2,000 or 3,000 shillings for bursary, and a child somewhere in Northeastern will get about 20,000 to 50,000 for bursary. So that inequality, that lack of equity is what that is making people of Mount Kenya want the 1 shilling, 1 vote, so that every vote brings a shilling for you.
Hence my question, because it does appear like a well-engineered crisis that someone knew, yes, we will defy the constitution, but to some political end.
If there's something I would like to say, like former government tried, like I said, but you see, Kenya's politics, when it comes to boundaries, it's very sensitive. And no matter what, now because the constitution, the deadline has reached, we have to look into this matter and discuss it, and discussing it openly and finding a solution.
And Joseph Kagai has finally made his way to studio. Bwana Kagai, karibu sana. Joseph is a political strategist with the Jubilee Party.
Yes.
You found us discussing this headline on the front page of the Daily Nation.
Yes.
That's a constitutional crisis that comes up at the end of this month with the expected or the anticipated or the lapse of the deadline in delimitation and review of boundaries. Now, without the IEBC in place, Parliament is even yet to come back from recess. It means we will not be able, there's no way we'll be able to get this done. Because even the IEBC CEO said that after they get a substantive chairman for the IEBC, they will need at least 18 months to actually conduct this delimitation exercise. Now, we've been trying to see whether or not it is a crisis. But something is obvious. We will be in defiance of the Constitution. It is not an act of, it's not a simple act of Parliament. It is a Constitution that this has to happen in not less than 8 years and not after 12 years. So for the very first time, we'll be defying this Constitution openly. Yet politicians are not having this discussion. Why do you think that is?
First of all is to thank you for this opportunity. I think I was caught up, we had the fires in Embakasi. Actually, we are a victim. One of our family property was burned down. My sister was affected also, with a cousin who also got minor burns. So since Friday, even up to yesterday, been busy within the same area.
Sorry for that.
Yes, thank you. But going to it, I've been listening throughout in the traffic. And as you say well, Ben, this is not a crisis that Kenyans are in. It is a political manufacturing of this crisis. There was no reason that after the NADCO report, we couldn't get an IBC between November and December. The projection was by December, the process could have started. But from the history of this country, the issue of boundaries being a very, very emotive issue because it dictates the politics of the next election. You remember in the BBI, the 70 constituencies issue was the one that actually broke the camel's back. There are people who feel the areas who are going to get more constituencies can be a threat to maybe their political alignments in the next election. So this crisis is not a Kenyan crisis, it's a political crisis that I don't think the president is willing to make sure that it happens. After the report, there was supposed to be done a joint committee, both opposition and the government, so that they can have a selection panel for the IBC. But you can realize the president has ignored the report, the delays in parliament, the MPs, it's like they have a gun on their head not to proceed. So it's like a crisis that is being manufactured so that the current government can manipulate or dictate the next election. That is what I see in it.
So it's more about the delimitation of boundaries.
Yes.
This could be the hot potato. It's not even necessarily the reconstitution of the IEBC commissioners.
No, it's just about the boundaries. You remember in history, I think I'm a student of history, when the former late President Moi was in power, how he gave districts, how he made sure that these are district, but the block of Mount Kenya never got any. Actually, the crisis of this delimitation is for Mount Kenya actually, and Western. Because the population are growing so fast, the resources are so dismal, but when now you come to set districts in the time of Moi, it meant government resources to that area. To a place he was taking districts where there are not even people. But in Mount Kenya, where the population is so high, they were denied those opportunities. Even now, as we come in, when you create a new constituency, you give the people of that constituency an opportunity to get services, better services from the government. You look at a constituency like the Juja constituency, Ruiru, you look at Naivasha, the populations are so high. We talk about 300 to 400 voters, not even residents, voters. So when you talk about that number, and you give them 130 million per year, and there is a constituency that has maybe, let's say, 11,000 people, you give them the same amount of money. How do these people in densely populated constituencies enjoy the benefits of the government services?
Okay.
That is the problem.
Okay.
Where resources follow, where constituencies are created, resources follow.
And it's clear, we've seen and heard these mamas, especially from Mount Kenya, where, as you mentioned, that talk about one man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. That debate had already started, and there was quite some agitation. But it appeared it's quiet and down. But you can see some other things popping up, some level of discomfort. Do you think that this could actually blow up into something bigger, especially within that region?
I think
the failure to conduct this delimitation.
Like you rightly mentioned, Mount Kenya felt that it was, the issues were not looked into even during the former regime of Moi and the like. But we've also had 2 presidents, Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta, who had the opportunity. I believe they kind of wasted that, not wasted, but they didn't achieve what they really wanted in that essence. So I think that this is going to boil up. It's going to continue boiling up. Like he said, there are those factors that will lead to its boiling. Number one is the number of population. The population is growing but the amount of money being distributed to these areas is very little compared to the number of people. So that needs to be changed so that we can have equitable share of these resources on the ground. Secondly, we have a lot of crises like unemployment, there's issues of drugs and alcohol, and there's other matters, political in Mount Kenya, that are simmering. So I believe that this is a good opportunity for the country, and the NADCO report should be adopted, and so that we can have this matter rested once and for all and move forward. And also what I want to talk about is now that there's opportunity on 6th of February. Is it today? Tomorrow. Parliament is supposed to be having a session tomorrow to discuss the NADCO report, even though Justice Dande had kind of poured some water on it, but Parliament has to go on with it because it was also approved in Parliament, and the leadership came from Parliament, but they adapted people from outside who came in to support so that we can have an external team led by Kalonzo Musyoka and who else?
And Ishungwa.
And Ishungwa, but Ishungwa now comes from Parliament. Obviously, the leader of
Also
minority
the team
is also part of the NADCO, so the bipartisan talks, so that we can have a solution.
Okay.
In the end of the day, I believe this is one of the areas that will have a bipartisan solution. Like he said, it's not an issue about Kenyans, it's an issue about the leadership.
But it has some other effects, especially on these constituencies that were said that needed protection because they were not able to meet the population quota when the last review happened in 2012. Constituencies like Mvita and others. Now, this protection was only to last until the next delimitation and review, whose timeline has already been prescribed in the Constitution.
Oh, yes.
So once you defy the Constitution, then there are questions about whether or not these constituencies will still be valid, and whether or not they'll have representation, whether or not they should still enjoy things like the NGCDF. What's your take on what should happen to some of these constituencies?
Like I said, previously, when we did the census, I think it was 2019, it was supposed to be followed by delimitation. Yes. That was the purpose for that census. Because you had to do a census so that now you can come and do delimitation when you know the population quotas. Yeah. But when it happened, the debates became about fictitious figures. The regions are hyping their numbers. I remember actually in the Northeastern, they had a serious problem saying the numbers that were being pushed were not accurate. But all that said, we are living in a time whereby this government, and I'm sorry to say this, they are intentionally wanting to defy this constitution. This government and the president himself leading, they are looking at this constitution and want to lead the country out of the constitution. But
let's be fair, even Azimio has been part of this delay. Yeah. They've also ensured that we do not have an IEBC. That was the argument.
No.
They've taken long enough to reconstitute the IEBC.
Let me tell you. We are in Azimio, Jubilee Party. We went to the streets agitating for a certain number of things. One was cost of living. Another key factor was the IEBC, the stock taking of the last election, and the IEBC constitution. But the president went ahead and set up a committee to start the selection panel. When we were in the street, we said, okay, let that stop first, let us discuss, let us have a joint look at these issues. When we did that, the government was saying NADCO was a waste of time. They denied even resources for that committee to sit, if you remember. Even the water that were being spent there, it was well-wishers contributing. The government had no will for this committee to sit. Again, if you remember correctly, we coming from the streets to agree to sit down was an act of goodwill from the opposition side. We decided, let us leave or push for these changes, let us listen to the government. But at the NADCO, something that shocked me, the government had more issues than even the opposition. If you remember the sittings of NADCO, the government presented more issues than the ones who had called for that.
Yet the delay in reconstituting the IEBC.
It is the government, not opposition.
On Azimio. Yeah. Because the president had already formed a committee to move on and the selection panel to move on and begin their
It was not
process.
A selection panel to bring an IEBC that is fair and people must understand what this president is doing. Intentionally attacking institutions. Intentionally.
Okay.
One, It is the IBC. When Chebukati was about to retire, when he was about to retire, like the former chairperson, he could have decided to step aside because the election was so close to his retirement period. He could have allowed another chairman to come in place. Look at how the Cherera 4 were treated. They were treated so that there can be a vacuum in the commission. If the Cherera 4 was still in office, we could not have this lacuna that we have now. But then the government intentionally attacked every institution. Now they're attacking the judiciary.
Okay, Bwana Githaiga, do you agree?
I don't
assertion
agree.
That,
I don't agree.
That, are you seeing any sense of urgency from Azimio, especially with such issues? I've not had any
Azimio has no urgency on this matter. In fact, they're the ones who are dilly-dallying. They're the ones who made it go off course. And because of selfish reasons, right? Because we are not happy maybe with the way the selection panel was done. And the president gave an olive branch and said, come, let's discuss, let's choose our people together. And Azimio has been delaying on that matter. Secondly,
the president has not said, come,
the NADCO, okay, obviously this is a bipartisan.
There is a report in parliament where the government dominates in numbers. Why has it not taken off?
Yes, obviously, the same government.
The same government.
My question is about the sense of urgency. We are not seeing it from either side of the political divide.
No,
on this crisis that we are facing now. I've not even heard making any mention of this. Fred, sorry.
If today the president can call his MPs and give a direction, go to parliament and enact and pass this NADCO bill.
That's where
the next week we'll have a selection panel.
We've seen the ODM party leader Raila Odinga conduct a number of rallies, with one at Kamukunji this past weekend. Was there any mention of this crisis that you're looking at?
No.
I have told you. Yeah.
It's not even in their, it's not in their vocabulary.
You have touched the nerve.
It's not in their vocabulary.
It is not in the interests of some politicians on this matter. This matter squarely affects Mount Kenya. And I'm shocked that even the deputy president has not even mentioned it.
No, the question you asked.
It is the challenge of delimitation is squarely hitting Mount Kenya. The Mount Kenya agenda is a hot potato for all political divides.
Okay.
The question you asked is Azimio interested? Did you hear them mention anything yesterday on this matter? No. They're just playing politics. But the government is holding its session tomorrow in Parliament to look at this bill. So I don't know why he's lying to Kenyans. Hold on. I don't know why he's lying to Kenyans that the government is not interested or the majority is not interested, because you mentioned the majority
It's the politicians generally that are not interested in having this discussion.
Some politicians.
But I'm saying
some politicians.
But I'm saying you cannot say both sides, because tomorrow there will be a session in Parliament.
Okay.
Basically to discuss the NADCO report and the bill.
Let's go back
so that it can be adapted and the government has goodwill for it.
Now, Bwana Kagai insists that this is a Mount Kenya problem, that is where it is a hot potato. When this agitation for one shilling, one vote began, or once it caught momentum, the president had to go to Mount Kenya, to Sagana Lodge, and summon all MPs. And with that, immediately after that, that kind of agitation died down. Do you think that there's a possibility to reignite this discussion from that region?
Most definitely. I mean, like you say, these are factual things. These are things affecting the Mwananchi. And every elected member of parliament knows that if they do not work for the Mwananchi, then even getting re-elected would be a difficult thing. And therefore, it is rightly and it's democratic. UDA is very democratic. This government is very democratic. And they are going to have that discussion.
With the kind of president currently, do you see that conversation coming back?
Fred, let me tell you, in Sagana, it was a directive. And if you remember, no member of parliament or governor was allowed to speak on that agenda. That has been a Jubilee agenda. In UDA, they have been wanting it and voicing it through other people, because this government doesn't want that discussion. When that discussion is held, people perceive like Mount Kenya are selfish, but they don't come to the nitty-gritties and look at how a child in Mount Kenya is going to school and how they are struggling to go to school. Now we are celebrating the Kiharo MP in Nyoro because of programs that he's doing on education. things that are supposed to be done across all constituencies. But you look at Sagana, it was systematic. The president was in Mount Kenya. No Mount Kenya agenda was discussed in that meeting, not even a single one. And from that day, that discussion ended. So as we raised it on the opposition side, it was, when we look at the cost of living, if you break it down, it boils up to that one man, one vote, 1 shilling. And you cannot do it without the limitation of these constituencies.
Okay.
Because government money follow boundaries and populations.
Okay.
That is basic.
If I told the president called those MPs to order and directed them not to have
Fred,
this conversation, how else do you think this conversation come back?
It is the reason why Wamushomba and UDA fell apart.
Okay.
Because she's the only MP from UDA and Kenya Kwanza government that has been voicing such an agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Basically, what it is, this matter about 1 shilling, one man, one vote is not just a Mount Kenya issue. And the president of Kenya is not a Mount Kenya president. He's a president of Kenya. And I do believe there are channels of discussion that they can have to bring this, and they're listening to us. And you're not far away from me. You're right here. We're having the same discussion. But I believe even in the Western, you rightly said, the population is high. So let's not make it like it's a Mount Kenya issue. This is a matter of Kenya, and we need to look at it from a Kenyan perspective. We cannot just look at it from a Mount Kenya thing, because it's not just Mount Kenya being affected by the boundaries and the limitations of boundaries.
Even Jubilee has been fairly quiet on this issue. Is it the lack of muscle that has, we don't hear that debate any longer about the 1 man, 1 shilling?
These are the issues. When we voice the Mount Kenya issues, it is the reason why you find us in court every day. It is the reason why you see the president and the deputy president want to take away Jubilee from its members. They want Jubilee to become UDA because it is the thorn in the flesh. And he says quite clearly, this is not a Mount Kenya agenda, but the entire country today is in a mess because of a problem that happened during election in Mount Kenya. If Mount Kenya is sorted, both politically and economically, it goes out to every constituency, because the mistakes that were done in Mount Kenya when we were doing the voting, even the backload of the electoral injustice, it was in Mount Kenya. The injustice, economic injustice, it is in Mount Kenya because Mount Kenyans are entrepreneurs and, in terms of their economic activity. When you solve that mess, political mess in Mount Kenya, and economic mess in Mount Kenya, it will go even to the coast.
My interest is to see how else this conversation can reignite or come back to the surface. For example, even within Azimio, there was this caucusing between Mount Kenya leaders under the Kamwene umbrella, and this is part of the discussion they were to push forth. How come we're not seeing much of that now?
Every time calls for different action. If you realize, BAMBA said that now we have done mandamano, we have discussed with the government through the NADCO. The government is not listening. We have taken now the legal recourse. Now we are pushing so many things in court. And why did you see the president now attacking the judiciary? It is because it is the only avenue that the Kenyans have been left with. If the government starts to do things that are not right according to the law, we make sure that we are in court checking the government, because the parliament has been captured. He has made sure now he's in the streets of Kenya on top of a vehicle every day. He's literally in campaign. So the only pathway now we have, it is through litigation. That is the path that we are using now. When we come to these matters that the government is breaking the constitution openly and defiantly, the only cost that we have, it is the judiciary.
Okay.
That is where we are now.
But when it comes to this issue, even from Azimio's perspective, a lot of people say that even the leadership of Azimio appears much quieter now.
Yeah.
They appear to have been pacified to some extent. Do you think that this NADCO process, the bipartisan talks, was intentionally used to pacify those political forces who would have otherwise been at the forefront to mention that we're heading towards a crisis?
You know, my brother here is saying about the president going on rooftops. I mean, he's meeting his people. You know, where do you expect him to be on a chopper?
In the office.
No, hold on, brother. You don't expect him to fly with a chopper and talk to his people while he's up there. What we're saying is The government is doing everything it can. But I like what he said. They are going to court. Could they be the ones who went to court to try and bring down the NADCO report that Justice Thande poured water to? I'm sure they must be the ones. Because that's how Azimio works. They're hypocritical. They're not telling you what goodies they have in that report. Like the setting up of the official opposition leader office. Who is that? It's Raila Amolo Odinga. He's the leader of opposition. There are many things in that report that are good for them. But what they do, they just pick one sensitive, two sensitive matters and amplify it so that it looks like there's a major crisis. Now we're talking, we went to Maandamano, and then after Maandamano, we went to the bipartisan, and now the government is not listening. So now the last people we have is the court, and that's why the government is fighting the court. That's hogwash. The government is not fighting the court. William Samoei Ruto basically pointed out issues of corruption. Before he came in, we spoke about the fire. And I'm very sorry about your sister and your family and also the residents of Embakasi for that fire. But wasn't it a judge of court that released that person and gave him bail terms that were very lenient? It wasn't William Ruto, it was the judge. So when William Ruto points out a problem within the judiciary, it is now the opposition finds it as a field day to attack the president and say the president is fighting the government. No.
Back to the issue of the NADCO report and what kind of effect it has had on the operations of Azimio.
There is something that I would like to bring to your attention, and you mentioned it quite. It's a crisis that is man-made by this government to not have an IBC.
How? Really? I mean,
if I was the president today, and I know the importance of an electoral commission, there are constituencies like Banisa, they are now going off for almost for a year without an MP. There are wards who are going for a year now without an MCA. But that is not a concern of the government. The concern of the government is not the basic things that the citizens want. They are focused on one agenda and one agenda only about housing. I don't know who even the houses are being built for. When I talk about this, there is this case that has been going around, and I saw you pointing out about Haiti. Haiti never came the way it is now because of just crisis. It started like Azimio started the Maandamano. The story of Haiti is a Maandamano issue that boiled to a point whereby there was no IBC to do an election. That is how the country collapsed. It is exactly what we are being built to. The same way the president of Haiti decided to extend his term without any law. It is the same place that we are going to. Kenya is big. You know, Kenyans, we are kind of, we are like very educated citizens who are afraid to go overboard, but we are following past or failed states, especially being aided by this president. If this president had Kenya at heart, an IBC process should have been a priority, not for 2027.
Now that Parliament
for current activities.
Yeah, now that Parliament is coming back, resuming after a long recess, and of course, top of the agenda is this NADCO report. The expectation is that this is going to remedy a lot of these things. Do you think it is a proper remedy?
I think it's the proper remedy, the NADCO report, because it's a bipartisan approach. Inside there are things they all agreed upon, which are cuts across.
Yes.
So it has to be discussed, it has to be passed, it has to be there. However, it's very uncouth for my brother to compare Kenya and Haiti in the sense that Kenya has never had a coup, like a successful coup. Haiti has lost 3 presidents, and I'm sorry, there is no president today in Haiti. There is a prime minister, and he did not extend his stay. He's just a prime minister who is in government, okay?
The former resigned?
Yeah, no, he was killed. My brother, he was killed. No, I'm telling you, right? So what we are saying is this: stop politicizing this matter. IEBC, the president had put a selection panel. It is Raila Amolo Odinga and the opposition who rejected. The president had goodwill to have an IEBC commission in place, but the opposition defied. And now again, they are playing politics like they normally are. Yet, like he said, today we have places where they're supposed to have a by-election they haven't had. Why? Because the IEBC is not properly constituted.
It's not there.
Yes, it is not the government. And again, remember, IEBC is independent. The government is just there to facilitate IEBC. And that matter of IEBC is also in this NADCO report. So why can't we allow the NADCO report to be debated in Parliament and see what comes out of that bill?
Ngagaye, I'm sure you don't want to respond to that. Or you have nothing to say.
I have a lot to say, but you know, Fred, my challenge is for us who can see things. You know, he was in Azimio, so he understands what we stand for. How he came to Kenya Kwanza side, I don't understand, because everybody can see what Kenya Kwanza is doing. If there is goodwill with the leader, the one mandated to lead this country, it should be his problem to ensure that every system of this government works.
Okay.
Picking one agenda of housing as the only agenda for government, it is the undoing of this government, and it is the downfall of that government.
Okay. I want us now to focus on the other headline that's on the front page of the Standard. And this is in matters corruption. And there's a survey. It says on graft, Ruto is more back than bite. President William Ruto's tough talk on corruption seems to be just that, talk. Going by the latest survey, the talk is empty as Kenya dropped in its ranking on corruption fight, doing worse than the global average and showing little effort to tame the scourge in the continent. Now, Africa's average score is 34 in the war against corruption, and the global average is 43. But Kenya's score is 31. We're below average, below even the continental average. Corruption has been with us for decades. And we wonder, are we rightfully blaming this president for failure to tackle corruption? We've been with this problem for eons.
It's a scourge. It's a scar to Kenya.
You cannot blame it on one president.
Yes,
can you?
in fact, I blame it on, but we gained independence. I would blame it on the colonialists, because the first people who brought corruption to this country were the colonialists. When they land grabbed and took our resources and everything that we had. And so it continued subsequently, even with the governments that came. But William Samoei Ruto, our president, our dear president, is being blamed for all the corruption in Kenya. Since 1963, it is Ruto who has been the president. No, we've had different presidents. And indeed, he needs to step up, and he's doing that.
The performance we're seeing here is during his tenure, though.
Yes.
Yes, I agree with you. Obviously, there are teething issues in terms of corruption. There have been changes in the police force. There have been changes in the EACC. And we need to look at even at the EACC, you look at what the Bishop Oginde is talking about. I mean, they're serious about fighting corruption. Now, what we need the president to do, we need to see some heads rolling, Kagai. We need to see people going home. This is not a matter of what party I am in or who I support. This is a matter of corruption in Kenya. And the president said corruption needs to end. So let's give him this year, to put change these figures from 31 to go down so that we can increase the fight on corruption.
Okay.
And I'm sure we'll see that.
Do you see that kind of commitment to fight corruption head on?
You know why I'm laughing? It is very hard to defend this government on this matter because, like you say previously, every president who have been there after President Moi, they have been trying so hard to fight and to minimize corruption. Kibaki did the best. Uhuru came in and started doing. You remember there's a time he even made sure that some of the cabinet secretaries steps aside. Towards his end of tenure, there were very serious cases, very big cases, and he never wanted to know whether you are his buddy or not. The court acted. How Nordin Haji, upon coming into this Kenya Kwanza government, dropped those cases, we are still wondering. We have a cabinet. Half of them had serious cases of corruption in court, some active. And all those cases start falling one by one. Now, I don't understand how my brother Githai cannot see. You know that saying that set a thief to catch a thief. This has not worked for us. Because look at the G2G deal for the petroleum. Pure corruption. Look at the cooking oil scandal. 10 billion went, and it is silent. Nobody speaks about it. When Moses Kuria went to Parliament to answer a question on that, 6 companies are associated with the top brass of this government. How can you even think that this government has the will?
Okay.
Look at the Kimorera and Aror. How did Rochit's case collapse? Who is there for Kenyans? When you set a thief to catch a thief, you believe that he knows the panya roots of the other thieves. But now...
who are you referring to?
Yes,
If
you
that's
should be
question,
very careful.
We need to be very careful.
Yeah,
about
I
very, very
remember
careful
during
because,
campaigns, President Uhuru Kenyatta warned Kenyans.
that.
I'm saying he warned Kenyans.
That's
I'm
very
responsible for what I'm
dangerous,
saying because he warned Kenyans.
direction we're moving to.
And also Matiang'i said, listen, also Matiang'i said, if you're not careful, we are bringing wash leaders. And remember, the other day I had, just bonyeza keyboard, you get dollars. That is wash.
Okay.
Look, can I just respond on that matter? It's very uncouth, and we know, and I've said that word again. My brother is on a brazen attack on the leadership, and the president is doing his best to fight corruption. And this will be seen, it will flow. Then again, we have Nordin Haji, he's in charge of national intelligence. So you think he doesn't know what he did when he was a DPP? He dropped those cases because it was political cases. Remember, it's not so far away.
They were corrupt
No,
cases.
hold on, brother. Those cases that were taken to court, Rotich, the former CS for Treasury, was witch-hunted by His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. All those cases that were dropped from court is because they lacked evidence. It's not the DPP, the former DPP, Nordin Haji, now the NIS leader today. It is not him who chose to drop them. It is the lack of sufficient evidence. In the Evidence Act, there has to reach a certain threshold. It was good for my brother at that time because his president, Uhuru Kenyatta, was a leader. So it was so easy to attack William Samoei Ruto. Let me tell you, there is something coming up called the state capture. Yeah? That is where you will find the real corruption.
Okay.
And we know very well Uhuru Kenyatta and his henchmen had said that William Samoei Ruto will not make it past December 2023, that the government will fail. All the mess we are going through today is because of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta
Let's go back
and
to,
his leadership.
let's not get distracted, go back to the report. And it says, this TI report, it paints a gloomy picture on the status of corruption in Kenya, as Kenya was ranked 126th out of 180 countries and territories assessed. Now, the findings cite lack of successful prosecutions in graft cases, which is an obvious statement, a very direct one, with a number of cases either dragged inordinately, withdrawn by the prosecution, or resulting in acquittals. They are making reference to what you've just been discussing.
Exactly.
Indeed.
It is open for everybody to see
Indeed,
that.
they're making reference to that because that's what happened. You don't expect the DPP to take a case to court with no evidence. And I said again, and I don't want to divert, I'm just trying to point out, when there was state capture, real state capture, is when these cases were brought in place. So when they did this survey is when the DPP had dropped what? The cases, isn't it? Right? So it's a fact. The DPP dropped the cases because they lack sufficient evidence. And even though they have pointed it out in this report, that doesn't mean those people are guilty of corruption.
But let me sober a bit. Even when the DPP chooses to drop a case, it has to be seen by Kenya that this case has no evidence. There is no reason why a politician's case can lack evidence, but a normal Kenyan, they will fetch for evidence wherever. The reason why this report is done, it is because they can see clearly. When you came to power, all the people that were associated with you, their cases were dropped. Isn't there any other person? You remember the...
Not all the people.
No,
Mike
remember,
Sonko's case was not dropped from...
no, he's
and there
not
are
in
many,
power. He's not in power.
No,
He's
I'm
not
just saying...
A minute.
Associated.
Look at when the president went to Mumias, the Mambo Matatu famous phrase. Where did it come from? A kidnapping first of a person who is in court. Then during the same time, a declaration is made. If these cases are not dropped, Mambo ni matatu. You cannot hold the company at hostage. There are reasons why we go to court. There are reasons why there are judges and there are litigants, so that the evidence can be argued before the court. This government did not allow these big cases, these big corrupt cases. I remember in KICC, the President Ruto himself admitted the money question is not 67 billion, it's only 7 billion. So he knew there was corruption. He knew that money was lost, even if it was the 7 billion. 7 billion are enough to do how many schools? A whole program on education. So they knew these cases are there. Look at the DP's cases, how they dropped, how he even the other day said that there's a judge who froze his money and he want to come on her. This government has no will, has no capacity to deal with corruption in this country.
You expect nothing less from a person who is a state capture henchman. And of course, and I don't mean that in a bad way, I respect the man, but the person he mentioned, Mambo Matatu, Rai, right? You're talking about Rai. Rai is a business associate of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, family, team sales, I don't know what. They own companies together. And you can see that is why they had captured Mumias and they had messed up the entire sugar belt.
Okay.
And so the president was firm, yeah, and exactly. Because sometimes when you take a court to case, when you take a case to court, it doesn't, there's corruption in court. That's why the president said, Mambo ni matatu. And after that, you can see that man drop the case because they were used to misusing the courts.
Okay.
When you go to Nyeri, Fred, look at the medical institutions. You remember why the former governor died? It was because of the Nyeri hospital equipment deals. It was part of the corruption cases in court. Dropped. Go to Nyeri, they don't have facilities. Because when you go and dissect those cases, it is supply of fictitious and machines that are not working. You just supply, you get paid. Remember there's a time during in the energy docket, supply of 200 faulty transformers. Those cases are being dropped daily. Who is and Kenya paid for the transformers. When we went to the cooking oil deal, 10 billion lost. Who is bailing Kenyans? Now we're being forced to give taxes to cover money that the government is stealing from Kenya.
Wow. Our time is almost up and it's just getting interesting.
Yes.
But I want us to look at one more headline. Sure. And if my director can help me with the front page of Taifa Leo on Ruto's travels. Ruto kupaa tena. Hii ni ziara ya pili ng'ambo katika muda usiozidi siku 10. Rais asema anaenda Japan kuwatafutia Wakenya zaidi ya bilioni 160. Na itakuwa ni ziara ya 50 ya kigeni katika miezi 15 ya serikali. Hii serikali yake inayolenga kukata matumizi. Now, Kenyans are still wondering, okay, well, we are in dire straits. We are suffering, but we're not seeing that kind of austerity from government. We're still seeing opulence. We're still seeing, because if we could compare with, is it Malawi, where the president said he's cutting off all foreign travel because, yes, the situation is bad. How come you're not seeing that kind of approach? And you can talk about this as you make your final comments. How come you're not seeing that kind of approach from this administration?
I think it was yesterday, somebody tried to mess up with the Namibians, and they had a good tweet that told you are talking about Namibia and your president is running the country through Bluetooth in a plane. You saw that. But said, even that being said, we have a man who is afraid to be in the country. The problems in this country require somebody solid in the office. But I think we have a man who, first of all, is afraid to be in the office. Number two, his priorities on resource allocations are misplaced. He says one thing, he's a double speak, because he says he's cutting costs, but look at the travels he's doing, how much it costs to the taxpayer. It's a lot. So for me, this president, mi nadhani anaogopa kukaa Kenya. Being in Kenya for just one month. Akiwa Kenya, ako juu ya gari. Akiwa nje chini, akiwa yuko juu ya gari, ako juu ya ndege. State is under construction.
Yes.
Where is he working from?
Every state,
the plane?
Every state lodge. That's why he's traveling the country. Secondly, the trip to Japan is supposed to bring Kenya 160 billion. Thirdly, the president himself, this is his moment to be the president.
The CS
hold
in
on.
charge of
This is-
Foreign Affairs, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, has already traveled to Japan. Some of these deals, one would think that probably the president can delegate. It is cheaper to send a Prime CS as opposed to the
He
president.
went there for preparation, okay, for this meeting. You know, bilateral talks are not like what we're doing here. There's a lot of matters involved in that. And now the president is going to put ink to paper, okay, so that Kenyans can begin to benefit. His Excellency, the president, has created opportunities for young people to get jobs abroad. We know very well this economy is struggling. There is no employment for our youth. The only place this youth can go, my brother, and I hope you agree with me right now,
I don't.
is abroad. And you know, even today, the remittances that we get from Kenyans living in diaspora is much higher. It's the one that is raising the GDP of Kenya, isn't it? The remittances that people submit. So therefore, these trips that the President William Ruto is going, he's going on behalf of Kenyans. Once Ruto finishes his 2 years and he's traveled, he's met all these people, he's striked all those bilateral deals, he's going to strike new deals for Kenya, I'm telling you, this economy is going to begin to rise. The only problem we're facing today is because of the former government. The former government left us in tatters. And that is what the president is doing, trying to recover these things. And I wish this president the best, despite all the opposition he's having. But I'm sure in the third year of his regime, Kenyans will be clapping and they'll be thanking him for the transformation agenda
That
he has brought.
timeline keeps shifting. It
course.
was
Even after 3 years, you'll be told
Look,
that 3 years
1
back.
year, 6 months, yes, it's work in progress.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
but you have to admit,
If I
you
mention-
cannot
if I
change
mention something-
anything in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day. William Samoei Ruto is not going to finish all the problems of Kenya from 1963 to today.
Okay.
If I mention something that I still keep wondering is how we remember before Moses Kuria was moved from trade to the public service.
Yeah.
He went into the country, through the country, launching business parks. What is happening on
Aggregation.
What is happening? Did they die when Moses was taken out of the ministry? If this president meant good for this country in terms of manufacturing and stimulating economy in this country, he should not be talking about taking the youth out of Kenya. They have been going even without him saying. He should focus his energies in ministries and empower the ministries to stimulate the economy. You remember when Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president, was in the Minister for Treasury. There was economic stimulus packages for across the country. That is what helped Kibaki stimulate the economic activity, and the country came back. That is where it was at that time that Kenyan economy was sustained by the small and micro enterprises. If the president wants and has goodwill to stimulate this economy to thrive, it is not by traveling. It's not by going to borrow money. They campaigned against the debts. But in these close to 2 years, they have borrowed so much more than what Uhuru had borrowed in the same time. So they speak one thing and do the other thing. So I think if this government has real issues with the economic activities of this country going down, they should come back to the office and work. Let him do, he's operating as he's the minister, he's the president, and the PS. Let him go back to the office. Call a cabinet secretary. Let the ministers go back to work and stimulate the economic activities.
Okay.
And I said, when we were talking about the debts that he says that the former regime engaged this country into, you remember there's a serious time that Kenya has looked like a construction site. Every part of this country was under construction. How many young people were working at that time and earning a living? The roads that were being built, how much were they supposed to complement the agricultural activities of those areas? But right now in the country, there is no road being constructed. There is no development activities going on. The only activity that is going on, it is going and promising and going abroad.
Look,
that is the entire agenda for the government.
When you have 7 out of 10 shillings going to pay the debt that His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta took, recklessly. I mean, what's her name? The lady COB, Control of Budget, Auditor General. They have all pointed out what former regime did. The money that was borrowed, you cannot account for any project. You cannot pinpoint any project. So wait,
how about
His Excellency William Ruto was categorical. He said first thing he's going to deal with is the debt issue so that Kenya can stabilize. So even though you're not seeing the roads being constructed, there is a debts that we need to pay. And if we don't pay those debts, Kenya goes into the black spot. And so therefore, we commend His Excellency William Samoei Ruto. Keep working hard, keep working for Kenyans, and I'm sure we'll
Thank you, Bwana Edward Githaiga, CIO Africa for Haiti Lobby Group, also the CEO of Vision 2030 Youth, and Joseph Kagai, political strategist with the Jubilee Party. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for helping us look at the headlines this morning. Now, straight to our editorial comment today has to do with that Embakasi gas tragedy. Now, that tragic Embakasi gas explosion that claimed the lives of at least 3 people and left over 200 others seriously injured is unfortunately just one of the many instances of negligence and non-compliance that have become the norm in Kenya. This country has indeed witnessed numerous incidents resulting in loss of lives and injuries where safety regulations have obviously been ignored. It is disheartening to observe a recurring pattern where individuals entrusted with ensuring public safety turn a blind eye to blatant violations that put lives at risk. The callous indifference towards enforcing regulations not only jeopardizes the lives of citizens, but also erodes public trust in the systems designed to protect them. The question that resonates now is, how many more lives must be lost before those responsible for such negligence take their responsibilities seriously? The Embakasi gas explosion has inflicted irreversible changes to the lives of victims and their families. It is a painful reminder that the consequences of such disasters extend far beyond the immediate incident. As a society, it is crucial to move beyond mere expressions of outrage and demand tangible action. The recurrent theme of tragedies followed by inadequate accountability measures must be broken. Authorities need to conduct thorough investigations into the Embakasi gas explosion, identifying individuals or entities responsible for the negligence leading to this disaster. Kenyan citizens should not accept a culture where simply making noise after a tragedy becomes a norm. It is time for a paradigm shift.